You're listening to the Miles Ahead podcast with Dr. Miles Graham Salisbury, where he shares tactics, techniques, and protocols to improve your physical, spiritual, and mental fitness in order to become self-led, grounded, and integrated.
We're back, Miles Ahead podcast. Today we have Mr. Zac Miller. Hopefully everyone can hear my audio well. I am massively sleep deprived, so if I sound drunk, that is why. But that's kind of par for the course for the podcast anyway. So we're all used to it. I met Zac at the men's initiation retreat with Trevor Boehm and all the other famous Jedi Masters a couple months ago in Colorado. He's part of the team, and he was our personal chef as well. So welcome. We got lots of fun things to talk about. Man. Of course. Yeah. We were just talking before we hit record. You're off to Mexico to do probably the most intense psychedelic on the planet. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was fortunate to get into a program for veterans and first responders down in Mexico with a company called Beyond Ibogaine, and they're starting what's called Beyond Service. And that's their veteran and first responder program. Their goal is to help at least 22 veterans or first responders a month heal from PTSD, TBI, substance use, all sorts of things. So definitely honored to get to go down to Mexico to be a part of that experience.
Yeah, you're lucky. I listen to the Jocko podcast. A lot of his guests come on and they talk about their experience or guys on the Sean Ryan show. I think actually he might have.
Sean Ryan had an experience as well. And, it's a really unique medicine. I know, the purpose of this podcast isn't all medicine related, but it's a really unique medicine. It's got a lot of neuroplastic or neuroplasticity benefits to it. One being a 90-day neuroplastic window. So that's about the most out of any of the psychedelics or anything in that class. That's the longest window for healing. So really looking forward to seeing what life's like after that.
Yeah, and you're also brave because isn't it like you have to keep your eyes closed and it's like almost a full day ride kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a very intense experience. It's a 12 to 24 hour experience for the flood dose, and usually about half of that's pretty intense. A lot of it, there comes a point in the journey where it turns more into introspection than journey. So yeah, it's very intense. It's under medical supervision. There's a full medical team down there.
Perfect.
On top of their phenomenal coaching team. The class that I'm in is the first of its kind for their organization, maybe in the world, of a cohort just with first responders. So everybody that I'm going with, there's 5 of us total.
Wow.
Some of them had military background, but most of them are only first responder background. And yeah, that's how I got into this work to begin with. Was I spent nearly a decade in public safety between the roles of fire and EMS, dispatcher, and police officer. And
the trifecta.
Yeah, the trifecta, and nobody told me what to do with any of the things I was seeing, doing, being a part of, smelling, any of those things. And all of those things have come out in different ways since I left public safety. Yeah, so really looking forward to a chance to get to heal some of that with this medicine.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, not many people can say they've done all 3 of those roles, and all 3 of those roles are extremely intense.
Yeah, they all have, they're very unique roles, and they come with their own unique elements of, how to navigate them.
Yeah, for sure. Again, we were talking at dinner once about how the dispatchers don't get a lot of cred, that all the actions in person with the other 2, but they're hearing and seeing some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're the first one, essentially when somebody, before the cops or, most of the time, unless they're, it's proactive policing or something where the cops are out, looking for things to get involved in. The dispatchers are the first line. people call on their worst day, no matter if they've called 911 before. If they've called 100 times, they're calling right now, and it's their absolute worst day. So you're always dealing with, people on their worst days, dealing with some of the wildest things that you've ever heard. I've had people that thought they saw alligators on an interstate in Ohio, to people wanting to bash their heads out with a hammer,
Wow.
and in the middle of a snowstorm, nonetheless. So, quite the spectrum of experience just with that job alone. And one of the things I struggled with most with that job was I was a trained firefighter EMT at the time. So, dispatching for the department I worked for, dispatched for 18 fire departments
Oh my
and
gosh.
3 police agencies. Most of those fire agencies were volunteer or part-time,
Mm.
Rural community. Being the one behind the desk, taking the call for the department, and, none of the volunteers from my department being able to go, and sitting there, the anxiety and, trying to keep the person on the phone calm, or, at least stable until somebody could get there to help them. It just lots of different things, especially going into it, that I had no idea about, or that I didn't know would affect me this many years down the line.
Yeah, for sure. You go in and what was this, 10, 15 years ago? Their mental health, psychological health, mental fitness, it was maybe just budding, but they didn't really tell you, oh, by the way, these intense things may happen to you, and here's what you can do about it.
Yeah, it was never talked about in the dispatch center I worked for. Trying to think that, another big aspect of dispatching that isn't talked about is a lot of time the dispatcher never knows the outcome of the call. The person's calling and, you're taking information, but it could have been a completely other issue when the crews got there.
Right.
And most of the time the dispatcher has no idea. So, they're thinking, was it an armed robbery in progress? Well, they don't know the outcome of it. They just know that when that person called, that's what they were calling about. And, to not have that closure on a lot of calls, was really difficult at first to start working through.
Yeah, I bet. So what slowly built up for you that you noticed or didn't notice after day in and day out, all 3 of these roles in your experience? How was that?
Yeah. Just the elements of the job, like getting up at all hours of the day to go for an EMS call or a fire run, whether it
Sleep.
was a working structure fire or not. It could just be an alarm off, but always being in that hypervigilant state, always being in that state to react, and do it really well, but you never, literally every call is different in some way. You're never going to have, even if it's the same person over and over again calling, you're never going to have the same exact experience. Traffic's going to be different getting there. The stoplight might not have switched for you. Just all the things leading up to it. There's so many different elements. And really nobody told me what to do with any of that energy. Just thinking of it as energetics alone, constantly going up and down, up and down. The most common thing that people did to deal with any of it, or whether it was subconscious or, kind of not talked about and just kind of part of the culture, was to go drink.
Yeah.
And, that was the biggest thing for me. And I struggled with that for a while, from age 19, being a firefighter, and, not saying that people didn't serve me underage. People definitely served me underage. And, it was just easy to get involved in alcohol, and,
For sure.
and things weren't talked about, calls weren't talked about, or incidents of any sort. If so, they were joked about, but you start drinking alcohol, then you're able to talk about things. And, you might not pick up on it just because of the environment, but like some people are really struggling, and it would come out when we were drinking. But
Yeah.
then, we'd quit drinking, go home, and do it all again, and add more traumas on top of that. And, pretty soon, if you don't do stuff with the things you're seeing and being a part of, hearing and smelling and seeing all these things, they're going to come out sideways one way or the other. And, the alcohol kind of increased that for me, honestly, and just kept me in a negative loop.
Yeah, for sure. And then not to mention the sleep loss on top of it, how much that really affects
Sleep,
everything.
when I was a dispatcher, since we already talked about that a little bit, I worked in a 12 by 30 office with, tons of computer screens, lots of different sounds, fluorescent lights, and I worked night shift, 6P to 6A.
Well,
It was not good for my health at all. I'd, go home. I remember going home, and since I worked nights, I couldn't go to the bar with all my buddies, so I'd get a growler full of, the best beer in town and go home and I'd drink a beer, then I'd have a shower beer, then I'd have another beer to fall asleep, and that was my daily routine,
yeah,
and we're not talking light beer. We're talking beer from the brewery that's,
yeah,
pretty high octane.
yeah, for sure. And alcohol makes us sleepy, but it tanks our REM sleep for sure.
Yeah.
Actually,
I mean, my sleep was, I'm still, I've been out of public safety over 6 years now and still dealing with the sleep recovery side of things.
That's amazing. So what still happens? Is it hard to stay asleep or waking up in the middle of the night? What's going
Yeah,
on?
so it's hard to fall asleep, for one. I rely heavily on breath work
Mhm.
for falling asleep.
Right?
I know we're going to get into that a little bit more, but
Yes.
falling asleep and then staying asleep. Right now, as I prepare for this Ibogaine experience, I've been off my prescription meds that I've been on for almost as long as I was in public safety.
Wow. What would they have you
And
on? If you don't mind asking.
so I was on sertraline or Zoloft,
Oh, right.
50
Okay.
milligrams of that a day, and then I was on trazodone for sleep,
Oh, yeah.
Buspirone for anxiety stuff.
Man, you must
And
have felt like a zombie when you woke up.
yeah, and that's the thing. I was surviving and functioning, but I was not one bit thriving,
Yeah.
until, and we're still working towards getting to thriving. It's
Yeah.
definitely not a perfect journey at all, but
Of course.
the only thing we can do is take it one day at a time and navigate what's given to us that day.
It's really good, and it's really hard to do one day at a time. I find that so logical, but my internal world fucking hates it. But
Yeah.
it's so true.
It's really interesting. Like I was part of an experience recently where, I'm 35 years old. And the one exercise I was a part of, I really didn't want to do. And essentially they had 0 through 99 in increments of 5 laid out on the floor, and you had to stand by your age. And at that point you had to stand there and you turned around and looked back to 0. So for me, it was looking from 35 to 0.
Mhm.
And, part of that exercise was, what's the one thing you needed to hear growing up that, you didn't hear? And that
Amazing.
was confronting enough alone. And then they
Yeah.
said, at what age did you need to hear that at? And for that to be between the ages of 0 and 5 was confronting.
Oh, yeah.
That it's okay to be me. It's okay to be seen. It's
Mhm.
okay to be authentic, and it's
Mhm.
okay to be fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like
We're all
it's
weird.
okay. But the other part of that exercise was even more confronting because I had to look from 35 to 99
Ooh.
and think about where I want to be each 5-year increment moving forward till the rest of my life. And, for somebody that's been working to heal substance and PTS and things, living in this one day at a time mindset, that was really fucking hard to even think that far ahead. Even the 5-year, like when I'm 40, what do I want? What do I want? Who do I want to be with? What do I want to be doing? And why am I doing it? Those questions were hard from that, 5-year mark, let alone I got to 99 and it was like, guys, I'm out of stuff. Like, I'm pretty simple, it's like, I want my kids to be happy. I want to be doing fulfilling, work that helps people, and I just want to live and be me. And that's what it really comes down to. Those small things, not at one point, I think in my 80s, I was sitting on the front porch drinking coffee all day. That's what I wanted to be doing. I want to be, retired. And they said at 99, all right, it's like I probably died on the front porch. That's probably where I'm at. If we're going off of this. So it was a really confronting but eye-opening experience. It was just kind of really brought me back to earth of like, wow, yes, I've been living this one day at a time mantra and it's been working, but like maybe I should bring back a little bit of the playful side of this and be like bringing in the dreaming of like, what do I want?
I love that. Yeah, I bet you in the Ibogaine you're going to go through this as well, because I've heard it sort of takes you back to birth, to all your, like, chronologically, and you kind of scrub through the memories. I can't remember how they were talking about it, but I bet you'll have a similar breakdown.
That's actually, I was on a call earlier today with my group, and, we were talking about how, some of the past participants, went in there thinking that the military was all that messed them up. And, 90% of their experience was actually related to childhood. In their Ibogaine experience, it was more childhood related, and recognizing and acknowledging things like that than working through whatever they did in the military or in the public safety.
Yeah, it fits. So the 0 to 5 timeline is going to be interesting for you, probably.
Yeah. Yep. There, there's definitely stuff there, and like through therapy and stuff over the past few years, I've worked through some childhood stuff and recognized, but I've also felt like there was something more there. So I'm really interested to see where the medicine takes me and what the lesson is with that and how to integrate whatever that is. Because part of me definitely feels like whatever it is that I'm forgetting is holding me back. Therapy and stuff, I've recognized that there's definitely childhood stuff for me, and there's a lot that I can't recall. So I'm really interested to see how the medicine really helps me look at that, recognize, acknowledge, and then how to integrate whatever that lesson is with that.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. And I would imagine you're going to want to have someone that, after action, reviews it with you over time, like, because people have these psychedelic experiences and they have them, but it's hard to metabolize them without the postmortem of what actually just happened. I'm sure you've got support there.
Luckily the program I'm in includes 4 weeks of integration coaching afterwards, as a group, and then with a one-on-one coach as well. So that was one of the things about the program that kind of set it apart from the others, in my opinion, was the preparation and integration care afterwards from their team. Yeah, so with having the pre-coaching and the integration coaching afterwards, that's, to me, when I got into psychedelics to begin with, people told me how important not only the set and setting, but the integration is with them. There's so much, and similar to breathwork, like the information continues to download or be revealed, or you might just be driving down the road and have a thought of like, oh wow, this makes sense now. And so how many of those, especially in that 90-day window, are possible with this medicine?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm glad you're doing that. Well, we didn't really even get into your origin story, except for we know that something happened between age 0 and 5 for you.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you want to talk about where you're from and leading up to getting into the public safety work.
Yeah, man. I'll go in wherever. Give me just a second. Oh, okay. Make sure I didn't lose you. So I'm Zach. I grew up in Ohio, in between Cleveland and Columbus, Ohio, a little town called Mansfield. And growing up, like I had, from what until I started uncovering some of these things, my childhood looked great. It's some of the nuanced small things that happened along the way that really changed how I operated in the world. And, from a young age, I think I was very spiritually connected, and, probably definitely considered different than most kids my age. I was always looking for relationship, like, and connection, and most of the time that was with people that were older than me. Some people call it like an old soul thing. I've been told I'm an old soul through a shamanic teacher I was working with, um, but nothing really major. It was all smaller things. My dad worked a lot. He was gone 100+ hour work weeks, running 2 pizza stores, and if we wanted to see my dad, we went down to the store. There wasn't a whole lot of time with him. And it didn't seem bad at the time. It's just how life was, but I recognize now how that impacted me.
Yeah, for sure.
And for me, one of the things with the medicine and what I've uncovered through breath work is, I don't know if you've ever heard of breath holding spells or episodes in kids.
Yep. Yeah, when they're
So,
anxious.
yeah, so breath holding spells happen to about 5% of the population, and there's not a whole lot of research out there. The research that is out there kind of writes it off as like just a anomaly of like this happens and everybody will be okay. It's more scary for the parents than anything. Um, and knowing that I was a breath holder from age around 18 months, or it might have started a little bit earlier, till I was about 8 years old. When I would get super frustrated, upset, angry, hurt, any of those things, I would hold my breath, pass out, and then I'd come back after a minute and be perfectly fine. And I think a lot of that was I also got some attention after that. If I wasn't getting the attention beforehand, I think that was a way that I got attention. But I think a lot of it was just me resetting my nervous system. I think it was a complete nervous system reset. And I've kind of determined that like things leading up to that might have led to that, kind of my nervous system being primed for anxiety and things like that. It's kind of wrote off like it's just something that happens to 5% of the population, and to me, I think it's more than that. I think at that very young age, very new human age, um, I used breath holding to reset my nervous system. I think, things leading up to that, and I don't know that that's an area that's really been explored yet. I'd love to get a hold of a researcher that's, trying to do some research and share what I've learned and, through my experience and through therapy.
For sure.
For me, that actually probably started in utero. Recognizing the things I've been able to recognize are that my mom, she was, I think, in her 30s, late 20s, early 30s when she had me. And she had my sister 22 months earlier than that. And with one older sister, my oldest sister's 8 years older than I am. So mom was raising a toddler to, young kid. And then my sister, who was a newborn, her dad actually had passed away the day after my middle sister was born. So, she was dealing with postpartum, dealing with the loss of her dad that she never got to really fully process because of taking care of kids and being home, with the kids, things like that. And then, postpartum with me. I'm sure life was not easy at that time. So really recognizing those things, to me, it kind of makes sense that I was a breath holder. And I learned at a very young age to unfortunately use the most extreme coping mechanism I could at that time. And
Right.
and that was holding my breath till I passed out, and that would reset everything for me after that.
That really makes sense. If you ever wanted to do a PhD, this would be a fascinating PhD topic because there is absolutely something here. At the end of the men's retreat, we do a long series of breath work, which was really was different for me because I've done a lot of Wim Hof and like the physiological side, Dr. Huberman kind of stuff, but never anything like Michael taught us, which was really amazing. And I could see that by holding the breath and passing out, it is sort of like when you have a panic attack and you put like a cold compress in the back of your neck and you sort of shock your nervous system to like a reboot state.
Yeah.
I bet you there's something there that could be found, or maybe someone is doing research on this. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, to me, it all goes back to the vagal side of things. It is, the breath holding. There's a lot of things around the amygdala that come into play, and just kind of that reptilian, survival. Really, it came down to I didn't feel safe. I wasn't safe. I wasn't getting the care, love at the time, and that's how I would handle it.
Mm-hmm.
When it became overwhelming, I'd hold my breath, and that would fix it.
So that would work for you. So you notice if you can remember, you feel not safe or stressed or whatever. You weren't getting what does Dewey Freeman call it? Food, touch, movement.
Yeah, food, touch, movement.
Yeah,
3 basic things.
Basic things. Come on, parents.
It's amazing how many times I've said that to myself as a father from hearing it from Dewey. Like, okay, when we had a newborn, it's like, okay, food, touch, movement, over and over again. Just, and that's what got me through.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's what we need, or we think we're going to die in the forest and we lose the will to live, and it's pretty stressful.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, and this hits to one of Traver's maxims or his ethos is your greatest gifts grow in the garden of your wounds.
Absolutely.
Yours started growing at this age, man, and now you're doing like this work, which is crazy.
Yeah. Ethos number 5, that one kind of stood out to me from the beginning. Like when I read that one really landed. Like, oh, there's some gifts here. Like this is not just a garden of shit. It is,
Yeah, it's not just a garden of shit. That's hilarious. Well, shit is fertilizer, so.
Exactly. Yep.
So you didn't know that this was going to become some of your greatest gifts, but they were, the seeds were being manured and planted from a young age. So sort of hard left or hard right, however you want to think about it. Did this lead into your work with public safety somehow? Or was it just like, oh, this seems interesting, I'll try it?
I think, another part that I left out, I have a diagnosis of PTSD and ADHD. I didn't get either of those officially until I was about 32 years old. And so, like, looking back, I mentioned, like, it's okay to be weird. It's okay to be seen. It's okay to be me. At around 8 years old, had an experience where I was told, like, that's too weird. Don't do it. Essentially was the gist of the story. And, I hid away my gifts for years, 24 years really after that, until I was 32, and it started, getting involved in this work started to kind of unreel some of what I'd been hiding away. And, a lot of that was around creativity.
Yes.
I am a creative person, and I definitely was creative when I was young, building forts and, just playing outside. Like that was the world I lived in. And, so for the majority of my life, I was going off of what other people thought was cool, what other people told me I should be doing or directing me towards or giving me ideas around. And none of it was really for me. I got into public safety mainly. What I've determined is I wanted to solve other people's problems so that I didn't have to solve my own. And, that is the most basic of it. But what I've learned with like the ADHD side of things, like I was seeking things out of those jobs that I couldn't get anywhere else. Growing up, I rode dirt bikes, skied, did things outside, did dangerous things with friends and things like that. And, when I got out of high school, it was like, okay, I need to make money, but how can I still get these feelings of having, flying through the air on a dirt bike? Well, the only thing that comes close to that is going into a burning building or running lights and sirens, going to an emergency call. And then to get there and to help people solve their problems and, not have to worry about mine, I was really good at solving other people's problems. Just didn't do any of it with my own. And, so it, essentially all of that led me to find this work.
Mm-hmm. The gifts were still growing. You didn't know it.
Yep.
Although it involves an immense amount of pain sometimes, unfortunately.
Yes. There has been a lot of uncomfortable, a lot of painful moments. And I'm really grateful to be here. And I can say that today. There were definitely days along the journey. A case of beer in one hand and a gun in the other. That's how I was living. And that was unfortunately, that was a frequent thing. I'd be lying if I said it was only one time in my car.
Sure.
But it wasn't. It was almost a, not a nightly thing, but a pretty frequent, sitting in the back of my car with a case of Miller Lite and my cig in my other hand, ready, contemplating and trying to decide if the world was better off without me.
That's a dark place to be. And I've worked with a lot of guys who've been in that exact same spot. I mean, it's eerie how very similar. It's either alcohol in the back of their squad car or wherever they are, and their sidearm. It's like they're just toggling back and forth. Should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go?
How many questions of, are my kids better off without me? Like, they didn't sign up for their dad to be fucked up. Like, they have no idea. My older two kids kind of know that I struggle a little bit, and I've tried to share things with them along the way in gentle ways that's not going to disrupt them. Their lives have been disrupted by me enough, through divorce and all my struggles. But I've tried to gently share with them of like, why dad gets anxious driving around, or driving through certain areas of town.
Yeah.
Or, why I don't want you to do certain things. It's, all those things have affected every bit of my life.
Well, it's good you're giving the explanation so they understand. And the mind can get in a really seductive place to think that suicide is the answer. When you get to that spot, it's really amazing how it can be that self-convincing. It can get so close.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm glad you worked through that and got out of it. I mean, the work still continues for all of us, but
definitely.
You seem quite a bit away from that dark hole. But when you're putting the pain to work now, which is good.
Yeah, it's I will just say, like, it's amazing to me, like, not that they've been suicidal ideations, but the intrusive thoughts, they continue, like, out of nowhere, like driving down the road. If I had a bad day, it's like, oh, that pole looks good or that tree looks good. Like, nobody'd ever know.
Right.
And those intrusive thoughts, like, that's a real thing. And like, I want people to hear that, like,
100%.
They might not ever go away. I don't know that if they'll ever go away. I was talking to another person recently that said, like, they don't think the intrusive thoughts ever stop after you have that first thought of, is the world better off without me? Like, those intrusive thoughts, and sometimes they even get easier. They come in faster. You can really run with them. So, having healthy ways to recognize, like, oh, that was an intrusive thought. Like, I'm not going to follow that one down the rabbit hole anymore.
Yeah. I don't have to believe that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's an intrusive thought now.
Yeah. That's enough. Yeah. The inner wounded parts. If we think of internal family systems, they often talk about suicide as being really, those are still protectors. They think you're hurting so bad that they'd rather have you die than feel the pain of that existential pain you're going through.
Yeah.
And so you're saying they never go away. Yeah, of course they're not going to go away because it's still part of you. So the goal in that therapy is to go help them relax and murder them, all the things that they have to do in that modality to where they maybe say something different or just do something different. But they don't go away, you're right. They just get repurposed and reorientated. But yeah, it's if you don't know that, that could be another reason to get the fuck. It's like, oh, these are never going away. It's going to drive me absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot imagine where I was I can't imagine being here now 5 years ago without doing the work that I've done. Like,
There you go.
I don't think I'd have made it. I really don't.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're a special case, and I've also heard many guys and women in your spot as well, and it's heartbreaking because you guys do such a good service to the world, and a lot of the veterans I work with, like, that's hard ass work. You don't get paid enough respect for what you guys go through, and nobody really even knows. You know,
Yeah.
they have a little inkling of an idea, but they really don't know your lived experience and how fucking hard and just wild
Yeah.
all those career paths are. Like, and you're doing
Yeah.
such a good thing for humanity.
It's a simple example. Like I was having a conversation with my parents recently, and my mom asked, how often did you pull your gun? I said almost every shift, if I remember right. Like, there aren't too many days that I can recall that, like, for some reason I didn't pull my gun for some reason as a cop. Whether it was searching a building, a car stop, or having my hand on it on a car stop. It
Yep.
might not have gotten drawn that day, but how very close everything always was. Everything was a split second away
That's it.
from chaos.
That's it. A
And
split second from chaos. Yeah.
and it blew her away. She's like, I'm really glad I didn't know that. And like, maybe that's just naive, like on her end, but like she also used to listen to the scanner. And like
Wow.
that was tough on me being on the road, knowing that my mom might be listening on the scanner. Like, I don't want her to hear I'm going to a
Right.
shootout. I don't want her to hear I'm going to another domestic with a gun, any of those things. Like, so just kind of put it in perspective for her too, that like, I really did carry around a lot that nobody knew about. Like,
Mhm.
and it was just to survive another day,
Just to survive another day. Yeah, you're surviving, not thriving at that point.
Yeah.
And then you get addicted to the adrenaline because that feels good and it wakes you up.
Absolutely.
And
It
then
feels
you
so
come home
good.
and crash. Yeah. And for us, people with ADD or ADHD, it's like highly addictive because
Well, yeah, and
we're looking for that.
what do you do with it when you get home? You had a super adrenaline rush day. You might be drained, but you can't even fall asleep yet, because
Tired and wired.
things are still going in the background.
Mhm.
So I would drink, or do sit on my phone and numb out.
Yep.
It came out in so many different ways.
Yeah, for sure. That tired and wired phenomena is a bitch. That's your brain doesn't know what do you want me to do right now? Push the gas pedal or the brake? Oh, let's do both at the same time. Sweet.
Yes. Yes. Burnout.
You burn out, exactly. Yeah. And that's when the dark thoughts come, unfortunately.
Yes, and it makes it so much easier for those intrusive thoughts to come and play, and they don't go away near as fast when you're in the depleted zone.
No, yeah, it's like, what is that? Idleness is the devil's playground. It's sort of
Ooh,
like,
yeah.
oh boy, it's dark, you're tired, and all the things you've been worrying about and you've been suppressing. Oh, here we go. We're gonna come out and play now.
Yeah.
And good times right before bed. Yeah, that's intense. So then, well, you lived in a particularly rough area and you had to do a lot of wraparound stretch services with all the things you were doing, and some weird stuff happened in your city from time to time, right?
Yeah, we've had some pretty intense stuff, just the everyday calls though. We did a lot of domestics and a lot of drug overdoses. Those were our probably top 2 calls for my
Ugh,
shift. I was on second shift,
man.
and first shift you don't get a ton of domestics because they either happened at night or people aren't awake yet.
Yeah.
Second shift, people are getting up and they're pissed about the day before something happened, or something new. And then, third shift, you're cleaning up second shift,
Very much.
and finding shit to get into.
Mhm.
But second shift is where I was my entire career. I had worked some shifts on nights and some on first, just in training, but the majority of my time was spent on second shift. And I remember one day I think I handled 5 overdose calls myself.
Wow.
That's all I did that day. That was
One
my
day.
entire shift. It was overdose call, go to the hospital with them, write paperwork, go to another one. Like leaving the hospital, getting dispatched to another one. multiple happening at the same house, multiple overdoses at the same location. I think we ended up that shift, we did 13 overdoses, between probably 7 or 8 of us, patrol officers.
Man.
And, it was exhausting. And with that, like, what I've learned now is a lot of moral injury came with that.
I bet. Yeah,
And
do I Narcan this person? Do I not Narcan this person? Do I
yeah,
save the
and,
Narcan?
there was a point in time when I was a canine handler and I carried Narcan for the canine
Yeah,
because he
right.
got in trouble. But like, I wouldn't have used that on a citizen. Like that was for my partner.
Your dog. Yeah.
And I probably would have used it on another officer, if needed. But like the main thing that was for my dog. So like I would never have taken it out of the glove box for a citizen. And so the moral injury around the overdose calls alone, just they after you go on so many overdoses, you really get desensitized to and dehumanized.
Yeah.
It's just another call. It's just another number. It's just another druggie, junkie, all those things. And, all the other things that come with overdoses as well. One overdose I handled was a bank robber from the day before.
Wild.
He robbed a bank, didn't remember robbing the bank, got him on camera. And, he ended up in the ER the next day with an overdose because he bought drugs with all the money he stole, which was only like $1,200.
Oh, man.
But overdosed and ended up at the hospital and then went to federal prison. Like it's just a insane, area that we live in. It's in between 2 big cities, but has just as every bit of crime as those 2 big cities does.
Mm-hmm. That's wild. And domestic violence and drug calls are probably the ones you guys want to handle the least of all.
Yeah, I mean, domestic violence calls have so much paperwork, and a lot of the time, nothing ever actually gets done with them. Because they most of the time, in my experience at least, the people were drunk. They got in a fight. Technically, it's domestic. Neither of them wanted to do anything about it, but as a law enforcement, we had to do certain steps, and for that to involve so much work and have very little positive outcome, it gets frustrating and it gets old really quick. So going on domestics all the time. Same thing with the drug overdoses. There were days, we'd do a drug overdose, take the person to the hospital. And then a couple hours later, we're back with them again for another overdose because, they had essentially gotten rid of their high. So they were trying to get high again, without overdosing this time, so many times, multiple repeat, offenders, I guess.
Yeah. That just recycles. Yeah. That's super intense. And that was before they started embedding like mental health professionals into these calls.
Yeah, so that started right towards the end of my policing career. The department that I was working with started having some of the mental health advocates and stuff respond, maybe not directly with us to the call, but they'd always do a follow-up. And that seemed to, start helping the problem, at least in our community, having those extra and letting people know what the resources were out there instead of, leaving them to think that they don't have any resources, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And then a lot of departments now have psychologists in-house, which is, you would think is good, but they also can take you off the line. So ends up being sort of, I don't want, how do you want to say, like blocks you because you don't want to go say anything because then you can take off the line, but you really need to say something. So
yeah, I definitely I've been encouraged in some of the programs I've been involved with lately, hearing how good of programs departments are getting.
Oh, good.
Where that stigma of if I say something, I'm going to be out of a job or I'm going to get medically retired, anything like that. That stigma is definitely starting to be broken. I'd say we still have some work to do. But hearing that, one, they have psychologists on staff, that's a hell of a place to start.
Hell yeah.
Two, a lot of peer-to-peer networking and peer-to-peer support groups and things like that, where you have that. Initially, it just requires being open to sharing, one, and two, trusting the peer that you're going to be talking with,
Of course.
and that's where a lot of the struggle I'm hearing, at least from the conversations I've had lately. That's where the peer-to-peer is still a little sticky, is like, oh, I don't trust that guy. How am I ever going to open up to him?
That makes sense.
But, there's really good organizations out there bringing programs to departments as well. I recently, my hat is the Warrior Path hat from the Boulder Crest Foundation. And Boulder Crest does Warrior Path, and it's, they have an in-house training, which is, I think, a 2-day in-house training for departments where they have peer-to-peer trainers teaching their curriculum, and it's focused on post-traumatic growth. So, like, what do you do after you've seen these things? Like, how do you start working through these? How do you share about them? How do you even start the process of talking about mental health? So things like that are really great. And they actually have a 5-day experience that they offer a couple places around the country that's a little more intensive, working with a group of like-minded guys that are trying to stay in these careers and, not let the mental health side of things affect their lives completely. So a lot of departments are making moves to go in the right direction. I think it's just going to take getting rid of that stigma of, if I talk about this, I'm out of a job. That's what kept me from talking about the things that I needed to when I needed to in those jobs. I remember, I think I mentioned to you at the initiation, like, I had a firefighter I worked with lose both his legs due to being crushed in between 2 tanker trucks.
That's right. Yeah.
At a working structure fire. And, I remember at 20 years old sitting in that critical incident stress debrief and looking around the room and everybody saying, I'm okay. And it got to me and I'm like, I'm okay. Like, and I was far from okay. I actually carried parts of that around and didn't process parts of that for 10 years. And,
Wow.
that really affected my life.
I can only imagine, man. Yeah, I think it's that piece with the in-house psychiatrist, psychologist, if it can be confidential, I think that's the workaround. If there needs to be someone else that needs to give you an evaluation to see if you're mentally stable or not, that's different. I think they should just split that up. It's like everybody talks to the chaplain in the military, and nobody wants to talk to the psychologist unless they're at the VA, like after they're done their deployment. Like, no one's going to talk to that person.
I think if some of the conversation was like, hey, if you come talk to me, you're not automatically on leave.
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
If it was just very upfront and direct of like, hey, this person is here to help you. They are not here to derail your career.
Yeah. Conflict of interest, man.
I think, that conversation's starting to happen, I think, of like, hey, it's okay. Like, we have to talk about these things. Like, if we want people in these careers to be able to retire from these careers with the benefits that they earned and deserve, then we're going to have to do things different than we have been.
Yeah. I think it's coming too. And you think you see all this stuff in legislature around psychedelic assisted psychotherapy and mental health, and then even departments having people that they can send people to within their community that aren't affiliated with the department or whatever, but they know that their credentials are good. There's a workaround right there. It's like, yeah, your insurance might have to pay for it. We're not going to, but we know that they're like, we vouch for them or whatever. Or my partners vouch for them or whatever, because they see them also. I think this is all coming, which is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So after you exited from doing that work and you found the Uncivilized Nation, it sounds like you just inhaled it, and then you you're working for him now. You're on the team, and you're like,
Damn.
if you guys watch any social media posts, this guy's doing the work. He's the magic behind it all. He's the genius.
Definitely not behind it all. We have quite the team.
Okay.
I'm really grateful to be on that team. But
Mhm.
yeah, I found Uncivilized in Traver back in 2019. I heard him on a podcast that was labeled Fight, Fuck, Feed, and Feel. And
That one's for me.
it literally was what I needed at the time, because I was fucking, I was fighting, I was feeding, but I wasn't feeling anything. You know, and you
Trying
know,
to feel.
the language that he used, he very authentic, and like, it felt like he was actually talking to me.
Yeah, he's good at that.
And you know, from that one podcast, I immediately bought his book, which the book is so unique. Not only did the words feel like they were written for me, everything's so relatable. The paper's different. It's different than any book I've read. It's more like my original copy is really beat up and worn now. And you know, I lovingly, jokingly say it's my Bible. I carry it everywhere. It goes on every trip with me. It's in my bag at almost every time, no matter what.
Yeah, you're talking about Man Uncivilized for people that don't know.
Traver's book, Man Uncivilized. If you're a man, that book's for you.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know, I tell everybody when I'm sharing the book, take what's for you, leave the rest. You know, and Traver actually says it towards the back of the book, like, take what's for you and leave the rest. Like, whether it may come up further down the line, it's maybe something you've already dealt with, or, you know, it may be something you never have a hand in, but like, read the entire book, take what's for you and leave the rest. And, you know, for me, a lot of that book came back to having a system, for one, to build off of. You know, Traver's, one of his biggest questions that he asks in the book and online is, you know, what are you building? And I had no idea what I was building when I wasn't building anything. I was just trying to survive another day when I found his work. And, you know, so using the Uncivilized pillars and the ethos tenets to kind of have a framework of a blueprint to start building a foundation. That's really where that book hit for me. And then, you know, throughout it, it's been, you know, something I've constantly returned to. But after I found the book, I found he had an online organization and group. At the time, they were just transitioning from a private Facebook group to the Mighty Networks platform.
Oh, right.
So I joined, I think it was in 2020, and really just dove all in, like sharing openly and authentically. You know, that was a big thing for me. If I'm going to share with these guys, I'm not going to try and have that share keep me stuck. Like, I want to keep progressing. So knowing that, like, I had finally found a community, one community I was looking for in my previous positions in public safety. You know, they talk about the brotherhood. You know, unfortunately, my experience wasn't the most beautiful brotherhood story. You know, I had a lot of people that didn't like me towards the end of my career, and it's probably because I wasn't that great of a human then. You know, I was not that great of a human, so perfectly understandable. But you know, finding that community, and then from there, you know, in August or April of 21, I went to my first initiation, and that really opened up to me. That was the first time in 21, so I would have been 31 years old, that I was able to recognize and accept that I had PTSD and I needed to do something about it. It was through a breathwork experience like you had at your initiation, same room, maybe even similar spot on the floor to where you were.
Oh, look at that.
And, you know, laying there and just doing this intentional breathing. And, you know, I'd only had really a couple breathwork experiences before then. That was my really big deep dive. And what happened for me was I was able to see all the bad shit and all the different experiences. And it was like, you need to really recognize what's going on here. And it is, you are not okay. You need to deal with these things that you've been a part of. And if you don't, life's going to continue to suck. It's going to suck less if you dive in and start working on these things. So, after that first initiation, that catapulted me even more into the work of like, I need to do as much of this as I can, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And, there are going to be really good days and there's going to be really bad days. And those continue to happen every single day. It's, there's good and there's challenging, struggle. I think struggle's okay. Struggle's a good, healthy part of the human experience that we need to continue evolving. But I do not personally think we're meant to suffer. I think suffering is pointless. I do not think we as humans are here to suffer. So, what do I need to do to reduce the suffering in my life? Well, it's looking at myself and continuing to do this work. And I think I was talking to our buddy Phil about following threads. And like, I'll find that little thread and I'm going to follow it as far as it goes. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know how long it's going to be, if it's going to go through the entire shirt or blanket, whatever it is. But I'm going to follow that thread and get what I need out of it. And, some of that may be obsessive or hyperfixations from the ADHD, but like anymore, the ADHD, that's how I utilize some of that hyperfixation is like learning as much as I can about things. Using my thoughts to learn more. Like, oh, that's a thought. I'm going to see how that applies in the different things I'm learning about or studying or sharing about. So yeah, and eventually along the way, I landed a paid position as staff for Uncivilized, and that's leading into a role with our nonprofit that we started, Project Uncivilized. But
That's
right
cool.
now, I help run our in-person and online team leaders, volunteer groups, and work with the programming and do a little bit on the back end with the podcast for Traver.
Yeah, it's big time. And also they got you at the retreat.
I was really excited. The retreat Miles was at, I got to practice being a chef for the retreat and really enjoyed my time doing that. It was getting to be there in a different capacity than normal.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, you were there for the psychological work, but also keeping us fed and all that stuff.
It was really fun to have that hybrid role of like getting to have these conversations with you guys in the kitchen while I'm prepping food and and nourishing your experience the way that I was nourished. Getting able to give back the way that I've been given to, is so fulfilling too, and just fills me up in a different way.
Food, touch, and movement. I got the food part.
Food, touch, and movement, man. I'll give all of it.
I can tell you're that kind of guy. It's good. So when you said you struggle versus suffering, what is your distinction between those two? I just wanted to come back to. I thought that was important.
Struggle. Struggle comes up in our everyday. It might be a struggle of sitting in traffic. On a day that we don't want to be sitting in traffic. I think the suffering takes it to a different level. Like not seeing that you can get out of that, like not seeing the way out and just kind of staying stuck. I think suffering keeps us stuck for sure. And I truly think it's unnecessary. I think a lot of us have in our minds that it's supposed to be one way and can't deviate from that. And, a lot of the time when our expectations, I guess, aren't met, we might fall back into the suffering side of things. And, when things don't work out multiple times in a row, it's really easy to fall into that, suffering mindset of like, shit just is meant for me the way it is. I'm not meant for greatness. I'm not meant for great things. I'm just here. I just have to make it another day for other people. And, it's just very victim mindset, I guess, leads to that suffering. And, for me, it's repeating patterns. Like I can recognize different patterns in my life, like when things were going good, when things were going bad. And, the suffering to me makes it really easy to see those patterns. I can really recognize, like, man, I've been down for 5 days. Like, what in the world is going on? Well, it's like, oh, okay, this happened, or this didn't happen, and, led to this. So does that help a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to know your personal distinction. And then you have probably a series of protocols and things you do once you're aware that you're in suffering, how to pull yourself out and
Yeah, that,
get out.
that's the practice. It is, where did I fall? Like, why did this suffering come back again? Where did I get out of my routine of things that I know are good for me? Like, or was it something I read, or was it something somebody said that tripped me back into that, like, mindset of suffering? And instead of just recognizing, somebody might say something and it might be really hard to hear, but it might be what you needed to hear. That's, to me, more struggle. Um, it's hard to hear those things, but sometimes we need to hear those things. So,
For sure.
yeah, I think, to me, there definitely is a difference between struggle and suffer.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's pretty amazing how far you've come. And now
You.
you're working with these guys. Yeah. And then to put a cherry on the top, you've sort of started your own coaching program and doing breath work. And when we did that breath work at the retreat, I mean, some guys, I don't know how your experience was with your PTS, but like some guys were like just unleashing deep emotion and crying and like having these deep spiritual awakenings. And,
Yeah.
for me, since I do a lot of Wim Hof, it was like, meh, like I just felt like I'm really jacked up, and I was kind of disappointed, but maybe I wasn't doing it right. But some guys were really, that was the first time they've hit that before. And so
Yeah.
did that experience pique your interest in breathwork and coaching from that initial initiation going forward, or how'd that begin for you?
Yeah, definitely from the first initiation, I was like, breath work is going to be a part of my life moving forward. Like, there's no doubt. Like, I I wanted to do it immediately again. Like, after that first session, it was like, okay, like, this is definitely something that's going to be a part of my life.
Mhm.
I don't know that I knew it was going to be this big of a part of my life. And it's something I want to be a really big part of my life, and share this really unique style of medicine. And for me, along the way, like, I got coaching certified through Uncivilized, and did a 7-month course with Bessel van der Kolk
Oh,
from
you
Body
did?
Keeps the Score. Yep, I did
The
his.
man.
I He had a program called the Trauma Stress Studies Certificate, and I did that, and it was with a group of about 25 of the top trauma experts in the world.
Mhm.
So I did that course, and then breathwork was still a big thing. And at that point, I was like, oh, I have a niche already of veterans and first responders that I can work with, but maybe everything I'm seeing on Instagram and online, I really need to be even more specific. So, do I want to get into psychedelic coaching, or because I experienced micro and macrodose psilocybin by that time,
Sure.
and was like, oh, like, guys need a coach doing this work,
Oh, yeah.
so it really came down to, between meditation and, prayer, do I choose to be psychedelic coach or a breathwork coach? And it really came down to breathwork's available and an option to every human.
Not illegal in some states.
And it's not illegal in some states. So it's a lot less scary for people. And I think just the overall general population's probably more accepting to, hey, if you breathe in this pattern, you may have a psychedelic type experience, as opposed to take this drug and have a psychedelic experience, and
Mhm.
so just the accessibility of it really intrigued me.
Yeah.
And then the physiological side of it, I do not think the Western culture we live in teaches us enough about breathing. We think
Mhm.
it's such a passive, uh, autonomic part of our body. And
Yep.
yes, it's a yes and. Like,
Correct.
there are breathing patterns that can take us into non-ordinary states of consciousness. And, um, I try not to use altered states of consciousness, just because even that word scares people. Oh,
Mhm.
you're
Mhm.
gonna make my consciousness altered. I don't want that. Well, what if you could experience just a non-ordinary, like it's just a little bit different than the consciousness you're used to. It's just a little easier to get people to dive into than, hey, the people just seeking a psychedelic coach.
Right.
I integrate breathwork into all parts of my daily life. I have breathwork that I do in the morning with my meditation and prayer practice.
Love
I
it.
have patterns. I personally use the term, I call it core breathwork. Core breathwork's like your everyday breathwork that like your Wim Hof for energizing, anxiety relief, to help you sleep, things like that. And then there's the more fun side or deeper experience side of sacred breathwork, which is what you experienced.
Does that be considered more like holotropic breathwork?
Yeah. So holotropic breathwork was a term that was created by Stanislav Grof. And he was actually an LSD researcher, him and his wife, back in the 70s, before it got shut down. And they were having such good experience with the LSD for PTS treatment that when their research got shut down, they decided to find a way holistically and naturally to give a similar experience. So they were able to find these breathwork patterns, which none of these are new. These have been around for probably millennia and, just haven't gotten passed down through cultures and traditions, but mostly our culture just didn't know about them. So, you know, sorry, my mind just went blank. I don't know where we were going with that. I was just talking about breathwork.
That's what happens, right? You become
So,
immediately present.
yeah, I mean, to me, like I said at the beginning of this, I use breathwork every single night, almost every single night anyway. There's probably some nights I lay down and actually fall asleep right away before I get to it, but for the most part, I do multiple different patterns, and it just whatever I'm feeling that day or whatever I'm feeling called to practice that day. But the accessibility of breathwork to me is one of the biggest gifts that we have with it.
I agree. And so when you're doing your coaching, you will teach people to do this along with the other work.
Yeah. So I do coaching around breathwork specific coaching. We could do multiple sessions, or just a like online experience similar to what you experienced. I am a little bit more reserved on who I'll do an online session with for those deeper sessions,
Sure.
mostly just because I want people to know what they're going to experience,
Yeah.
and not being right there with them. Sometimes that's a
Correct.
little tricky.
Yeah. If they
Um,
pass out and hit their head or something.
but yeah, definitely the core breathwork stuff. That's coaching that I do on the daily, and then just offering like mentoring and coaching for whatever people are going through at different points in their life. If you're familiar with human design at all, I'm a human design projector. So I'm a guide and a seer. And, I've had people come to me and, just tweaking a couple things in their schedule to make them more efficient, or tweaking a couple things to get them an hour of self-care that's going to impact the rest of their week or day or life, those types of things. So quite a few different offerings. A lot of what I do is through Uncivilized, but yeah, my brand is called Evolving Guidance. And, what I've used mostly lately with that is my blog. Just been sharing whatever comes up for me that I want to write about.
What is
And
your
then
blog called?
it's Evolving Guidance. It's on my website.
.com. Yeah. I gotta put that in the links. I'm just making a note right now. I think I have it, but just people can find that because it's gonna be really helpful for a lot of people. I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's really
Perfect.
interesting. Makes me want to sign up. Like I want to learn more breath work.
Absolutely. It's been fun because like I don't think we'll ever know everything about breathwork. So it's like, constantly learning, constantly, watching different videos, different people facilitate, reading, there's constantly, a book that really, it was a part of my breathwork training, but another one that really kind of showed the Western side that we're lacking is the book Breath by James Nestor.
Oh, classic. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much information in there that, talking about sleep apnea alone, like anybody listening with sleep apnea needs that book. You do not have to suffer wearing a CPAP. There are ways, and we can get there with breathing. It's just how we do it intentionally and, with practice, and it takes dedicated practice to, make that change.
Mm-hmm. Ever heard of the Oxygen Advantage? That's another one.
Yes. Yep.
Peter
I've heard that one too.
McKeown. That's a good one as well. Yeah. Yeah, it's so cool. So much to learn. Well, I'm excited for you to go on your trip to Mexico next
Thank
week
you.
and come back.
Yeah, can't wait to do
transformed.
another one of these and talk about that experience.
Oh yeah, we'll have you back on too, for sure. Yeah, you and Traver, man. Traver's in the dark now.
Yeah, yep.
Right now.
He's over in Italy right now. He hasn't gone in yet, but he'll be going in the next couple days.
So Italy's the spot where he's going. It was it in South America for the last one?
Yeah, he was in Guatemala for the first one. I think it's the same company. They just they have an ashram in Italy as well.
Gotcha. And his book comes out soon. I have pre-ordered it.
Yep. It's available for pre-order, but it'll be out. I believe it's an August date right now.
28 Days in Darkness.
Yep, 28 Days in Darkness.
Should be cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to have him on. Hopefully he comes back together. Yeah. Same as you. Like, you guys come back all in line. They're all haggard. We'll see what happens. But
oh, yeah.
You guys are both doing very intense work. I mean, credit to you guys.
I sent him a voice message the other day, just kind of acknowledging, like, hey, I know you're going into an initiation, but this is definitely an initiation on my end too. And, you may be in the dark, but I'll be there with you in that realm, and,
yes.
That access is definitely going to be there.
That's so cool. Yeah. What a great thing to send to him. Yeah. That's on point. You will be definitely connected.
Yeah, just different kind of darkness,
Yeah. Yours will be in living color, and yours will be pitch black. Well, actually, you can hallucinate in the dark too, of course.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sure he'll experience some of that.
Things in cartoons or whatever. All right, well, I should probably let you pack and get ready mentally and all that stuff. We'll have you back on whenever you feel like you're ready to come back on.
Awesome, man.
Post integration. So just so people hit it on the way out, if people want to find you, just either socials or to work with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, socials at Zac_evolving, ZAC_evolving. Mostly spend time on Instagram, trying to play around with YouTube and TikTok a little bit, just on the playful side of things. My personal website's evolvingguidance.com. You can find breathwork there, mentoring, or the blog. And then manuncivilized.com for all things uncivilized, to join the nation, our online private men's community, to find events that I might get to cook for you at. And obviously Traver's books. All three should be available on the website. Traver's podcast, all those things. Uncivilized literally saved my life. And I'm honored to get to be a part of the team that, puts out anything uncivilized. And, I hope everyone will at least go check out their website.
I agree. I want every man to be able to do something, especially the men's initiation. I'm excited to be somewhat connected too. We're starting the Portland chapter of
super stoked
the men's groups at some point with Davey. So that's influx. We'll see what happens. But
absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool to get to know you guys and be adjacent to the Uncivilized world, because you guys are really doing a good service to men. And there's going to be the first women's retreat coming soon, which is
in October.
Pretty amazing. I was talking to Dewey at the initiation. He said he was having his dream would be to have a all men's one with men's facilitators, all women's with women. Then they swap. Ooh. So men work with the women, working with the men, and then the whole group comes together at the end, like a month-long thing. Wouldn't that be just crazy? Yeah,
it'd be intense.
Crazy intense. Yeah,
I know how intense just the men's ones are. So
yeah, exactly. I think it'd be very healing, but
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. No, that's how the work gets done. We each got to do it separate, and then we got to do it together.
yeah, struggle, not
That goes
suffer.
all around.
Agreed. All right, dude, this has been awesome. It's good to catch up with you again.
Yeah, brother. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, yeah. I'm absolutely gonna share this with all my LEO and fire service friends
Yeah,
and
please
family.
do.
My
Yeah, and
2 siblings in
if I can help
LA.
them in any way, please send them my way.
That's a good call.
Just,
Yeah, I do.
as a real human man that's experienced some things, sometimes what I found is a lot of these guys are a little apprehensive to share with other guys, and I'm not
Sure.
tied to a department. I'm not tied to anything. I'm just a human that's trying to help others.
Yeah, you're a great resource. I will start funneling people to you for sure. Appreciate that because it's sorely needed, and
Yeah.
we're gonna be the ones that originate it because it's not
Absolutely.
there yet.
It's not going to do it itself.
Unfortunately, no. All right, man.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
You got it.
Yep.
Good luck with the Ibogaine. That's freaking amazing.
Thanks,
Can't
man.
wait to
We'll
hear about
catch
it.
up soon.
Yeah, when you get
All
back.
right.